Hello, welcome to this week's Wave of Action chat with Matteo and Kiki and the EP. This week we're going to start off by talking about David Cameron's speech that he made about Google and Facebook and Twitter having a duty to take down extreme material, and he warns that the internet cannot be an ungoverned space anymore. So who wants to start? What's your thought on the internet not being a ungoverned space anymore?
Go on, Matteo.
I think it's that it just shows his intent for 2015, and people need to remember what he's going to say now for when you go and vote, if you go and simply because it's ridiculous. The internet needs to be a free space. It's the only place you have to express yourself without being either targeted by police or put in jail. I used to say that was the exception for the Western world, but it's starting to not be the case anymore. We're starting to get our rights slowly taken away, and the only thing you have.
I mean, when
Go on.
Sorry, I thought you finished. I was going to say, when I messaged you over the link, you know, I equated it to the burning of the books in Hitler time, and it's a bit like that, isn't it? It's modern equivalent.
I mean, it's the modern equivalent of that. You know, before, to shut down knowledge, you had to burn books. Now, to shut down knowledge, you have to shut down the internet. Thankfully, it's incredibly hard to shut down the internet because the government have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to the internet. I mean, thankfully, David Cameron hires advisors because of who he likes and his friends are, rather than knowledge. So most of his advisors haven't got a clue about the internet, which helps everybody else because they don't know how to legislate when it comes to the internet. You know, you can't not govern it. The only way you could ever govern the internet is if every single country in the world came together on a unanimous decision. And we know with the UN, that's
they already have teams that take down posts that they consider extremist, or they have the government, don't they, doing that already? NSA, DCHQ, and that. So you think the legwork that they're going to have to put in to take down all our posts? It's like, when as soon as we sort of hit an area like education, students, we've just wiped out Twitter. There's no room for anything else on it. I was looking at it today, this morning. It's just like Occupy, student demo, national demos, and it's just forced its way into the mainstream. They can't let it happen. They can't let this happen.
But you see, I mean, if you look at, the best example I have of taking Mickey out of government when it comes to internet security and that is Pirate Bay. The amount of times they've tried to shut down the Pirate Bay, and the amount of times they take the absolute piss by just literally, they say, virally floating off to another country's server is ridiculous. You can jail their founder for about 10 times the amount of time you would jail a paedophile for, which is massive amounts of injustice. But you just can't shut down the website because they will just move to a different server. The only danger, of course, is that if they shut down, for example, Facebook, Twitter, or Google+, what that will happen is that all the activists, all the people that want to get knowledge but don't know quite how to operate the internet as easily, they are going to be the ones that are going to be halted from learning things. Because most people won't have a clue about how else to contact each other, how else to have conversations via old methods of other chats. Facebook and Twitter, because it's easy not, and that's the problem. That's what they could shut down if those companies agree.
How many people do you think, when they follow through with this identification for Facebook, are just going to leave Facebook? Because it doesn't take just an activist to not want your name all over Facebook. A lot of people don't put their name on Facebook.
Not anymore.
It's the target advert. They don't like the profiling that's done from all of this social networking. And that's not just activists. That's general people.
I mean, I think it was Flickr who tried to do the same thing. Or Bebo, I can't remember. One social network tried to implement, I can't remember what the name of it was, tried to implement a certain amount of ID referencing to a profile, and they went bust. They don't exist anymore. It's not Flickr, because Flickr does exist still. But they just disappeared off the face. It's got to
be Bebo, hasn't it? It's got to be Bebo. That was the only one that I don't see it at all now. it went spare for a little while, didn't it? And then it just died.
Because one of them tried to do it, then they would take your social information and sell it to companies and governments. The trouble with that was that they were asking for too much, because Facebook do just the right amount. They're asking for your job, your school, what you like to eat, and the crap you like to post. But they give you leeway so you can give them however much information you want.
Yeah.
And you can lie about it. You can say you're the CEO of, I don't know, Barclays Bank, and nobody will check.
Well,
Do
you think programs like Catfish have like helped it or made it worse, this ID thing? Do you think people might go, yeah, it's about time, we're sick of these men pretending they're women and these blah blah blah? Do you know what I mean? It's maybe they're gearing the public up in a way to say that, well, we need this transparency. This is where we're this could be their way of. I
think it's the lowest form of propaganda, where they're using real abuse cases, and and this is something that people need to remember when they look at David Cameron, is that this man, he's not a man, he's a horrible, horrible person. He's using children and vulnerable people that are actually going through vicious bullying with trolling, vicious bullying offline as well as online. You know, it's not just online. These people are getting bullied offline primarily, and then it's trickling onto the online sphere. It's not just the internet. And he's using these people as cash cows to then say, look how bad the internet. It's the internet that's doing this. No, it's not. That's just how people are. The internet is showing you the many faces of humanity. There are some humans that are really horrible. The point is that the internet means that everybody can be reached at any certain time. That means the people that would normally be geographically too far to reach you offline can now reach you. What we need to know is that if you don't want to be targeted by certain individuals, you know, sites like Twitter and Facebook should provide you a way of effectively blocking these individuals. This does not mean that you should destroy the internet's freedom just because a certain number of people are getting bullied. I think that's absolutely wrong what the government's doing. It's you.
I don't think the average person's going to buy that, because you've got so many like couples that are flirting and doing stuff that they shouldn't be on the internet, that they ain't really going to want people snooping into their business, because it is a bit of a playground for adults. Do you know what I mean? They get on the internet and they piss about, and I don't think a lot of people wouldn't like people, even if it's just chatting to their husbands. You know what I mean? In chats. They aren't going.
Are they going to start? Are they going to start checking out Plenty of Fish and places like that as well? Because that would be devastating to a lot of people. Do you know, Plenty of Fish? That's like a pool of I'm not even going to say it. I don't even want to say it.
If you are an average person going to Plenty of Fish, you are not going to want the government snooping into your business. You are not going to want the government seeing your bloody selfies that you post over in chats and things like that. I think there's so many people that are doing so many different things on the internet that the average person is not.
I mean, if you need a reason to not support this, I would say it's probably this one, where I don't know if you heard, but I think it was MI5 or what's the new one? That's basically the NSA for Britain.
GCHQ.
No, not GCHQ. The Central Crime Agency or something like that.
Oh.
They are behind the Anonymous campaign. They're basically boasting how they've hacked into the dark web of the internet. They've attacked Tor browsers, etc. And then it turned out that that wasn't true, and the site was, and they've had a massive publicity crisis. Anyway, there's a lot of.
I watched a program on that. I'm sure I did. It was on TV.
It must have been quite recent, because they've only been around. Like, they've invented a new police force that is the exact same thing as the NSA in Britain. It's exactly the same. The name even sounds similar. But what's interesting is that they've been leaked saying, GCHQ and MI5 have been leaked saying that they have, while hacking into people's profiles and getting information from various companies, you know, going into Google and accessing Google documents without permission from Google, etc. They have come across people's selfies that they've sent to people, and these selfies have gone around the.
They sit there wanking over them,
and they've gone online. So these organizations that have gone into your profile and hacked into things that were private to you that you'd sent to your, I don't know, boyfriend or man interest, girl, whatever, these are now going into government hands, and the government has leaked them onto the internet.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that, but it's just these people have got huge amounts of power, and you want to give them more. To me, it's you're killing off the only thing you have of being able to freely express yourself in the biggest way possible, because you haven't got anything else in this world left.
No, a lot of people, they're working all the time, and a little bit of internet time's all they've got. That's how they meet people today. That's how they do their shopping. You know what I mean?
It's the evolution of the world is moving onto the internet. Whether you like it or not, agree with it or not. As you said, everybody's buying stuff online. Everybody's they're dating online now. People are meeting each other online. Soon you wouldn't have to have human communication anymore if you don't want to. You probably can do that now, unless you have to go to work, of course. But think about it that way: that all of your data is now online. Everything else that people couldn't trace of you before is now online. What you buy on a supermarket on a regular basis, what your health conditions are, what your job history is, what you did on a Friday night for the last Fridays of every week for every month for the past 2 years. They will know exactly what you're doing because it's all online. And if they manage to trace that, they can create a profile of exactly what you've done in your entire life up until this point. And that is way too much power for anybody to have, let alone a government as corrupt as ours or the US, which is.
But then look at how they want to take that forward with the thought police almost. Like preempting when you might commit a crime, rather than when you actually do commit a crime. There was a big, I can't remember what it was called. Was it Index? I can't remember. There was one in Europe. Campaign against, and that was they were getting information from CCTV, from online activity, and they were kind of hoping to use it. They said for paedophiles and things like that, so that they could preempt when they might act. But they said also, you could preempt maybe when someone was going to stab somebody, something like that. And act
Like Minority Report.
Yeah, but they had a big study in Europe on this. I'm sure it's Index or something it was called. And you're thinking, but up until you commit the act, you've always got the chance of your conscience saying, no, I don't want to do this. And having a thought and not acting on it is not a crime, is it?
Now it is.
And then you take it into activism. And the things, they're preempting that because of the things we post onto Facebook and things like that we're going to make a stance against the government, which is terrorism, and arrest us on that fact. It's all police thought policing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very 1984.
I mean, it's dangerous when you think about it that way, because it's like the Spanish Inquisition, back in the Renaissance and medieval ages when you didn't have to actually do anything. If God told the Pope or the cardinals that you were about to commit a crime, you could be burnt to the stake. Just because you haven't done it yet, but you will. They say, oh well, we know how you act, so you will do this in the near future to stop people from having to suffer what you're about to do. We're gonna kill you. It's not obvious that extent because I'm gonna burn anybody yet. But the point is that you're supposed to be equal. You're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, all equal before the law. When the hell did the law stop mattering now?
But to be honest, the way
that with the getting rid of the cautions.
The what?
They're getting rid of the cautions, and you can pay what the police. You can do what the policeman basically tells you, and pay how much the policeman tells you, and you won't go to court.
Commission.
That was called a bribe back in the day.
Yeah,
otherwise known as a bribe.
Yeah, but so if the policeman says you broke that window, right, you've got to pay the victim to get it repaired, and so £50 for compensation. You got to do that, right? Now that's the policeman saying that you're guilty without a trial, in my opinion. If that was to come in like they're suggesting, I'd recommend that everybody went to court.
Yeah. I would never agree, because how do you know that policeman is not friends with the owner of the house and say you got to pay £200, and then afterwards £100 goes to the policeman and £100 goes to the guy?
Yeah.
I mean,
which, to be honest, probably
anything with
happens
that.
anyway.
You could do absolutely anything with that. That is called a bribe. We're going to institutionalize bribery. It's like
Yeah.
when you go to Russia, for example, they always tell you to have about 200 rubles handy, because every time you get stopped by the police, you got to pay about 100 rubles.
I don't think there's anything this government isn't trying to institutionalise. Do you know what I mean? They've asked for the age limit of having sex with children to 4 years old. How can you ever condone anybody or let anybody out of a prison cell that even suggests that? Let alone allow them to be a part of, they're still MPs.
But
Why are they still MPs?
that's an important thing, that's one of the things that David Cameron has come out last week, was it, and said that people who believe like the abuse scandals in Parliament are conspiracy theorists. And then you go on about terrorism and things like that, and the non-violent extremists, and you're thinking, well, all of that, they're saying Google and Facebook and Twitter shouldn't be sharing.
Yeah.
But if it hadn't been for us sharing it for the past God knows how many years, it wouldn't now still be, coming to light. Because it would have been brushed under the carpet and it would have never been revisited again. It's been
The only reason it hits mainstream is the way we plug it. Constant. And they know that. But to call it conspiracy theory, which is really stupid, because Theresa May's obviously come out and said that it isn't a conspiracy theory. So which one are we supposed to believe? Which little lying Tory? They pick and choose what they want to do, and the fact that they can institutionalise something like paedophilia and lower the age of consent to 4 years old, or even consider it, goes to show I think they're quite willing to do anything.
Yeah, I mean, they've never really hid from any of this. It is. We do have to also accept that we did vote these
monsters,
these ingrades in. I mean, seriously, we did vote these people in. And we did vote a bunch of people that believe it's okay to have sex with anybody above the age of 4. It's okay to bribe police. And by the way, if you make 1 million or 2 million, we don't want your money because we don't want you to pay tax. What still shocks me is to the point where, okay, fine, you want to deal with the internet because you think it's going awry. Maybe there is a case for that. But what about dealing with slightly more important matters, like the fact that Amazon or Starbucks or name other big companies do not pay tax? Why are we not dealing with those big criminals? The fact that they could, if they all paid tax, the tax they owed us, we would be out of recession tomorrow. And in fact, Britain wouldn't owe any money anymore because the stress would be so high. The fact that they could put Britain out of recession in a day if they paid the tax they needed to. Why aren't we dealing with that?
Yeah.
Why are we not tackling that? Also, you got to remember that it's not like these companies, like, oh, well, poor Starbucks, you couldn't get a coffee at 4 a.m. because you put them out of business. That's pocket change for them. It may seem like a lot of money to me and you, but for them, that's nothing. These companies make billions a year.
And how much we subsidise their wages and things, because they're bottom paid jobs. How many companies that do not pay tax in this country get tax credits paid to their employers, which enable them to make as much profit because they aren't paying a decent wage?
Yeah, it's deluded. It is actually deluded that they've managed to get away with it so long. I don't think they'll get away with it for much longer, to be honest. I really don't. I think we are witnessing now, we're in the moment of watching a financial collapse of capitalism. I think that's where we are right now.
They've come out and admitted that, haven't they? I think the Telegraph did a piece this week about how that it is going to be civil unrest in the UK, and that the worst is yet to come.
Yeah, I mean, they were saying that economists are saying that we're up for another recession. We're due for another recession.
I don't think it's a recession. I feel that it's a collapse. I feel that this is now the time where people, even Channel 4's got programs on there like How Rich Are You and who are the richest people. People are getting pissed off, and I really don't think capitalism can thrive in today's age. I
think capitalism has to, it is growth, has to grow all the time, and at some point on a finite planet we run out of growth, and we are getting to that point now. well, we've passed that point, but we've ignored it really, the resources on this planet and the state the Earth's in. But you know, we are desperately running out of time now. You know, we have to rein it in and start thinking of how we can be a bit more resourceful, reuse things, and not so greedy. And that is a complete change of attitude for a lot of people who just consume. They don't think about where this shit's coming from. They don't think about who's making it, and they don't think about whether there's an. I mean, chocolate's supposed to run out by the year 2020. Kiki's dying over there.
Don't even say that. Yeah, I can't even think about it. You know.
They invent the synthetic chocolate made out of rubber, probably. So you got that, I'm guessing.
Oh, great yoga mat. Great.
But I mean, it's so true. It's, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, capitalism had its use, and it was a good system for a time. You know, it provided a lot of technology that we didn't have, and it thrived, as you said, on competition and growth. The point is, like Marx said years back, is that once competition ends and companies, because in the end, competition always ends. You can't keep racing forever. Eventually, one company is going to win over the rest. Now that is fine, but that means from then you've got to keep evolving. You've got to evolve into another system, because now we've got. I mean, the next big step really is space. If you think about it, you know, the idea that we can, as a human race, as a species, start to look at the stars and start to think about what is the next step. The point is, you can't do that if you're money driven and you're divided. We still live on a national basis in the sense that, oh, we're British, we're American, we're from China. It doesn't work anymore. You know, these archaic ideas of dividing human beings. If you want to go to the next step of, for example, looking at the stars, trying to colonize space and going out and expanding on that, you need to do that as a planet, as a united human body. You can't do it as a divided nation with companies like SpaceX looking for profit all the time. Because
it's quite clear that they're gonna keep trying to plug that. They are shoving British values and patriotism down our throats like there's no tomorrow. I think they're hoping that the best thing that can happen to the UK right now is civil war between each other, is a race war, and is a class war that would earn them the bucks that they really, really would like without having to go and ask their pals to pay their tax. Do you know what I mean? They'd get. Sorry.
Yeah, but you see the point. I mean, the thing that's interesting is that if you look at it, there's almost like a breakaway in the 1%'s idea of the way the world should be, because there's a lot of them, a huge majority, it seems, that believe that the world. They would rather see the world collapse and destroy itself than for them to lose their 10th yacht. You know, it's that kind of level. They don't want to lose anything they have. They would rather see the world die and burn than to give people fair wages and to make people fairer. You know, equalize society a little bit more. And there's another sense. I mean, if you look at the space community, if you look at Mars One and other companies like that, a lot of them have come to the realization, you can see this in press statements, the way they're announcing the press, they said that humanity can't exist. You know, you can't go into space thinking in profit, because the amount of money that it costs to send a space mission, for example, is so big that you can't actually get the finances for it. There are the resources for it, but because the resources in capitalism cost so much, you can't do it. So we're being halted by this idea of worth, that the fact is that somehow the value or the worth of something is so much more just because there's money behind it.
And we're deprived of opportunity as well, because, you know, the middle class white people that are getting the best opportunities and chances, and the people in India and Africa and, you know, places like that, they have no chance. You know, that what they achieve in their life is through pure fight and struggle. You know, of course some make it, some, you know, get out there and manage as best they can, but there's some people that don't have that opportunity.
There is a clear white privilege card. There is a clear white privilege. Anyone that denies that these days is just deluded, I think. If you're born in the West, you're privileged just for the fact of where you're born. You're born in the Middle East, you're a terrorist.
But there's also, you know, like in South Africa, since like the apartheid ended, there are severe white poor people, aren't there, as well?
Yeah.
You know, so there's lots of people all over the world that just don't get the opportunity because of money. You know, that people could have something so amazing inside that helps humanity, that humanity would just waste that opportunity because it's not profitable.
It's exactly what SpaceX said. Is the idea that you've got so many people that are in poor parts of the world that will never get the ideas heard, and we could be losing the cure for HIV because somebody's figured it out but can't market it or can't push it out there because he lives in a third world country. So we're going to lose that cure for AIDS because somebody else has come up with it now. Somebody else has been born to come up with it.
If we go on about that, though, there's a company in Canada, and they think that they've come up with a cure for cancer. Now, this is an old drug. This is something that can't be patented. So they are desperately pushing for money for trials and investment, but no pharmaceutical is going to invest in it because they can't patent the idea and they can't make the profit back. So this is what capitalism is doing to us. People, life is not profitable anymore. You can die. There was a family that their daughter was diagnosed of having cancer. They'd been to the doctors a few times, and the doctor had said it was just growing pains. But then they went back, and they were told she had 8 weeks to live. This is in England. Now she needs some treatment, but it's an 8-week waiting list on the NHS, and she hasn't got long enough to live for that. So they have 1 week to sell their house to pay for the private treatment to save their daughter. At what point does a little girl's life become all about how much money you've got?
And that's the point. That is the idea of capitalism.
Yeah.
I don't think any lives matter these days. They don't care about anyone's lives.
But lives don't matter in capitalism. I think people that believe lives matter in the system we live in is deluded. You are a number to them. If you look at the way the government quantifies their people, you are manpower. The amount of people they can send to war if they're at war, the amount of people they can send to work if they're at work. The only reason why the pensioners get any sort of respect or what's it called, pension or any sort of right is because they vote, and because in a way the government has tricked themselves up a little bit by giving people the ability to vote in a semi-fair way. I say semi-fair because first past the post is by far not fair entirely. But that's the only. Otherwise, old people will be left out in the streets if capitalism had its way. Because they serve their purpose. They've given everything they possibly can to the system, to the elite. You're gonna be dead soon anyway. What's the point of you? You're not seen as a human being. You're seen as a commodity that can be bought and sold, almost like a slave. Exactly like a slave.
And they have ways of manipulating each part of that. So if you're destined to be one thing, that's why we've never moved away from being able to, so if you have your children young, then it is more likely statistically that your children are going to do that as well. And they like to keep us in those ranks so that some people are the bread and butter. Some people are just the silt. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the way they need it. That's the way they have to have it, because the amount of the labour isn't going back into the labour anymore. The people are working. It's going straight back into capitalism.
Yeah. It never went back into the labourers. I mean, if you look in the past, for example, it would go to the king or
Well,
lord.
it had a drop, didn't it, in the 70s, when obviously people just got pissed off. And it had a drop in the 70s, and the gap between the rich and the poor lessened a little bit, and people actually started getting more for their labour, and then it's just skyrocketed again.
But that was the height of capitalism. That was when they need. I mean, the point of capitalism, when it's at its height, from the 19th century onwards, up until basically today, we had this industrialization of things. We had this innovation, so they needed the workers not just to be there as drones to do the same old stuff day in, day out. They needed them to innovate, to think, to be smart, to be active, So they had to say, you do have your say. You can chase the American dream. You can do this. You can do that. You can be your own boss if you work hard enough. They needed to motivate people in such a way that they will then give their ideas and mentality and ability to the system. Now, all you need to do, most jobs, is to sell, go to sleep, eat, repeat, sell. You don't actually have to have any sort of mentality to do a lot of the jobs nowadays. There is no sort of charge for innovation. I mean, Apple have released 5 versions of the same phone over and over again. and they sell it massively. You don't need to do anything. You know, there is no innovation as such. Yes, they improve one feature, or they say they do, but that's it.
You think about it though, that they've released iPhone 6, but they've probably already made iPhone 9. You know, I mean, they're not interested in giving you the latest technology. They're interested in how much they can sell you along the way. But I think, like, we all know that things are got to change, and it's probably a good place to bring Chris in, because he was at the student demo, and we could talk about about the student protest.
Kiki's out, by the way.
I know, I'll add her again.
Oops.
Oh, hello. I'm just adding Chris.
Hello?
Hello?
Sorry.
I'm just adding Chris.
Oh, it's really bad.
On what happened on the student demos.
Yeah, we're just going to talk about because we were talking about how fucked up things are, so let's talk about how we can change things, starting with student fees and the student demo.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
have you just
for the rest of my life.
Yeah. You've got somebody putting a report up tomorrow, haven't you? On
on the whole thing. I mean, that is just ridiculous.
Well, yeah, we see some pictures of you know, some pretty harsh tactics from the police. That Danny, the statue man, he had his head cracked open by the looks of things.
Chris see it all, didn't he?
He
witnessed the whole thing. Just, I know that Danny's just trying to do some good, you know, just like the rest of us. He's no different. He just seems to have got the balls to be a bit more proactive and direct action about it.
Did he? Is he taking that policeman to court? I mean, what's happening with that? Do you know?
I would say so.
Yeah, I think so. He's already got a few things about the plinth, so it's probably going to be a long list against the Met Police.
It's always they're very aggressive towards young people. It seems. You know, if you look at the way they handled the student protest, if you look at the ULU protest when that policeman was repeatedly punching that kid in the face.
I think
saw that it was brutal.
I think it's
brutal.
Because in America this week, they had that drill on the school, didn't they? The shooting drill, and the police went into the school fully armed, not with pretend guns, full armed guns, and the kids didn't know what was happening, and the teachers didn't know what was happening, but it was a school drill, a shooting drill. Now that must have petrified the kids in that school, and that's indoctrination to make you used to the police carrying guns, the police having force, and you doing what they say as children, in my opinion. And I think that's probably why they come down hard on them at student protests.
I don't think it's just that. I think it's the fact that they are telling you, you have to fear us, we own you, we are the law. You try anything against us, we will come down on you like a ton of bricks. And in the US, it's you don't do what we say, we'll shoot you. You know, if you look at Ferguson. They've shot another person in Ferguson again. You know, that's still kicking off.
What about the woman that they raped in Ferguson? The pregnant woman that has brought charges against Ferguson police because when she was taken in, she was raped.
Oh my God. I mean, the American police are just animals, though. They're not human beings anymore. The amount of indoctrination they go under is ridiculous. The amount of stuff you hear, it's like from a badly made horror film.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
More than real life, isn't it?
Become arseholes. It's, you know, you think you can get away and treat people as you like, and the army and the police must, to a certain extent, demonise the enemy, because that's how. If you make them subhuman, you don't treat them with the same respect, and you don't mind hitting them, and you don't mind degrading them.
Same way Israel has done Palestine.
Yeah.
We interviewed, you know, Bradley Manning, who's now known as Chelsea Manning.
Yeah.
We interviewed his what's it called, PR man, when he was going through the trial, and he was saying that, you know, Bradley was telling him that when he released the leaks, he was also releasing a load of documents about police intimidation. I mean, army intimidation and how they would view the enemy, in the sense that when you're trained to see whoever you're about to fight as subhuman. You're not trained to see them as human. You're not trained to see their kids, their wife. You're trained to see them as vermin. Not just subhuman, but these vile, horrible things that you grow to hate. And the more you stay in the army, the more you hate that grouping. There's a reason why most veterans are utterly racist, and why most veterans in Britain, for instance, end up joining the EDL or various other places, unless they've seen so much war and they jump out of that indoctrination and see, wait, this is not right. But if they don't, they end up becoming incredibly racist, because at the moment we're at war with people that tend to be slightly darker skinned than us, brown skin because the Middle East. So they hate towards those kind of people, and they hate towards Islam because it's easy to hate towards a religious group rather than just the people. So that indoctrination goes on, and Chelsea Manning confirmed that. And I'm sure it happens in the police force as well, because the tactics are basically the same. It's just that there's slightly less violence. You're not there to kill, but you're there to contain. But I'm pretty sure the tactics are almost identical.
Didn't the police give Danny quite a few digs, Chris? Like digs?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I had the microphone muted. Yeah, from what I saw, they jumped on him, grabbed him, and there was like 4 to 5 officers on there, and I saw punches going in. Like Danny was down that way, and there was punches going in, no matter what.
That's
I can see that movement.
I've got it documented on video. The punching.
And that wasn't the only act of violence. That was probably the most direct impact that I saw, apart from another male gentleman. But I saw police running into women that was trying to help someone, and full on barging. And those guys are not small in the tactical stuff. Just barging these women and going flying, and you're like, whoa! And before you can do anything, they close the circle around them. They don't let you go in, and you're there trying to document it. At one point, there was a guy that was the evidence gatherer, and you see the same thing happening to another gentleman after the Danny incident, and they're on top of him, and the guy's moving the camera around and holding the camera, looking at us, and I'm like, I go to him, why are you recording me? I said, why are you not recording that evidence over there? Why are you not And then, just to wind me up, he puts the camera in my face. It's like, well, hold on a second. You're not going to record your officers doing that, but you're going to record us. It was not nice to see yesterday, to see the tactics. And that amplified. I think that amplified the reaction of people completely. The first interaction when they went to Parliament Square, there was no police officers there. It was like next to none. That made me somewhat suspect in the first place. Well, why? There was a lot of press there, a lot of press, thinking that, well, this is going to kick off and we can just portray this in a bad way. It was interesting to see how the difference in policing was numbers-wise to November 5th. It was completely different. The size, the amount, and then the aggression level. Normally that I've seen, if there was the class warfare or the black bloc, those guys were marched with by the special TSG guys constantly. There was none of that from the student demo. None of that at all. And that was like, well, hold on. Why are you standing off now? Because every other march that I've seen you guys have been on these like there's no tomorrow. Not like you're not going to let them do anything. You kind of gave them opportunity to do something. And then the provocation. But yeah, they took Parliament Square back very easily. It was very easily.
Yay, students!
To me, the way I heard what happened and heard how it was documented, to me it seemed like it was a lot of provocation, as you were saying, but a lot of it to demonize. There's this consistent media onslaught of how young people are, Generation X, we're all failures, we're all not going to amount to anything in life, we're all going to be poorer than our parents, etc., etc. And to me, it's just another one of those long line list of, look at these young people, got no life, just reprobates, doing nothing positive, just trashing central London for the hell of it.
When you say that, I just this second before I came, just before P gave me the invite, I was listening to you guys chatting, and I just checked my Twitter, and someone says, "You're in the Spectator, Ginge." I'm like, what? So I've looked at the link, and there's like a 3-second me. This guy was trolling yesterday, and I he interviewed me, and I went at him for about 5 minutes, and I was full on because he was asking some ridiculous questions. But I've got it on live stream as well, so I'm going to get that and put that onto the Spectator and say, no, look, this is the full interview. This is how much he was trolling people. Did you see the copper telling the guy that you'd got to learn how to throw a punch properly? And as he's doing that, so there's 4 officers, and it's kicking off. They pull out the batons. They go to hit people. As they go to hit people, they start moving back because they're outnumbered. And one of the officers clearly says, "You need to learn how to throw a punch properly, mate." And then the other officer, 2 pips on his shoulder, goes, "Press." He says press, and then he says, "Ask them to move out of the way," because he heard what he said. If that's not provocation from someone, I don't know what you need to learn how to throw a punch. What? You're an officer. You're meant to be keeping the peace, not telling people how to learn how to throw a punch properly, mate. Don't work like that.
Well, it was like the URU guys, the URU student demo that happened a while ago. The officer was shouting racial slurs and yelling at the student to the point where eventually the student flipped. I think he either spat in his face or yelled at him or pushed the police officer, one of the two. And then the policeman grabbed him, pushed him to the ground, and then started to punch him while he was down. An officer had to grab him and pull him away. This student was on the floor. He couldn't even move afterwards. And it's, again, I think it's what we were saying before, this idea of, I'm pretty sure the police are told to demonize young people and to see young people in a different light, because they, for a lot of protests, the student demo yesterday, the student demo at the URU, the student demo when they trashed the Conservative headquarters, they see them as vermin. They see them as good-for-nothing scoundrels. Therefore, you can beat them up, you can abuse them, doesn't matter what you do to them because they don't mean anything. Whereas if you go to other protests where there are adults involved, they tend to be slightly more respectful because they see them as human beings. They see, so it's like an age gap. When you hit, I don't know, 30 or whatever, or 25, 27, 30, you're suddenly seen as a human being. Anybody below the age of 25, and you're seen as savage, you're seen as horrible, you're seen as a waste of space, a detriment to the economy. The reason why we're going down the hole, it's all this horrible crap, and it's all, a lot of it is to do with the way the media portrays young people. It's consistent about hoodies, gang culture, stabbing each other. The London riots wasn't a massive attack on young people. How the London riots, it was all young people. The average age of the London riots was 27 years old. It was not young people.
Yeah.
It was 27 years old by the police records.
We haven't got the media power they have, and that's where they have got one over on us. They shut down our internet any more than what they already are, and this is where it's going to get even more dangerous. We're not going to have any voice against what's happening. Right now we are breaking into the media in little areas where we're plugging it, doxing. We're doing what we can when we can, and we're relentless with it. They take that freedom away and we can't do it. They class us as extremists like Occupy. We can't do it. And that's exactly what they want from it.
Yeah, I think it's where geopolitics comes into play a lot for activists, though. There's a reason why Russia Today, for example, is always there, because they are of technically the other side. So they want to make Britain look bad, and therefore for them it's a benefit to report these things and to report them well, because they make Britain look troubled. Instead, if you go to CNN, if you go to BBC, Fox News, The Sun, all those things are all propaganda machines. They would be good if we were all Russian trying to do something over there, or if we were Chinese doing something over there. Then they would be our best friends. But right now, we've got to think about it in geopolitical terms, because Russia, they've got a huge audience, so have Al Jazeera, and they have a reason to cover what we're talking about. So I think it's a lot of it is going to come down to activists using geopolitics, using the fact that countries hate each other, and using that media platform to boost yourself. Because Russia, they've got a huge readership, huge readership. Not the Daily Mail huge in Britain, but there's something. There is something there, and a lot of people are turning away from the Daily Mail and the Sun and the BBC because they know it's rubbish. They know it's not just skewed anymore. I mean, it's basically as real as Disney in some aspects.
There are still people that are absolutely dedicated to things like the BBC. We look at it, I would say, an age range plus 40 plus. They tend to still look at the the BBC as well. It must be right. It's on the BBC. I actually heard that comment about a month ago. I just looked at him. I thought, I can't do this. I just can't do this today. So, no thanks. It's all right. I'll leave this one. You know, there are people absolutely the weather. That's where they get their factual weather. That's where they get their factual news. It must be real. It's BBC. All right, the Sun fabricates on occasion. But have you seen that programme where they literally bullshit? They bullshit. The one where they made up that Amy Winehouse's hair smoking. And then they put it out. And then one of the papers, I can't remember which one it was, actually, it was a fake headline. They put it out as a fake headline. The newspaper accepted it and printed it. Then the next newspaper that took it actually said that somebody kicked her in the face to put the fire out of her hair. Now the whole story was fabricated from the beginning, but the papers still did it, and each paper added their own little bit.
It was interesting when we did that, you did that fake, a mouse sneezed on my cheese and gave me Ebola when I had, you know, that kind of fake news, and it was a perfect copy of The Sun, and it was a proper, like, you know, Freddie Starr ate my hamster. It was one of those really super sensational headlines that you could probably have really seen from The Sun. It was like, but like you say, Matt, reverse propaganda, using these other terms that are using, like we say, reverse propaganda, just what the BBC are doing, but against what the main machine. That's what I think is what we need to be doing. But that's what we do now anyway. So
yeah.
These shows talk.
I mean, the friendship with Russia today. Go on.
I was going to say, I think the internet shows bullshit about it as well, though. Because, I mean, you just watch these, if you've got lots of newspapers on your timeline, you just see, like, one headline. It starts from a video that's been going around with your mates, and then there'll be a headline, and then there'll be a more elaborate headline, like that seal humping the penguin, right? That starts off, I fucking love science post, right? I share it, we're all having a bit of a laugh, then we see the headlines. Seals sexually assaulting penguins. And then the next was seals sexually assaulting penguins and eating them. And I was like,
yeah.
You know, this is from a stupid video of it, you know, and I think that in a way the internet's lifting the facade of it. You know, before the internet, people thought that reporters actually went out and investigated and reported. And I think the more you've got media on the internet, the more you see that they just wing it. Everyone's just winging it.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I've spoken to journalists, you know, professional as well as freelance journalists, that a lot of the time will just be saying, like, for example, you know, during the Cold War, just before the internet, they had they had the massive conversation with the Cuban Missile Crisis, where we were about to go into nuclear war with the USSR on one side and the USA on the other. And they had both the red phones, and they were both talking well into the night about why we shouldn't launch nuclear weapons and destroy the world. There was one BBC journalist on BBC One radio, I think it was, that was covering throughout the night the whole thing. The rest of the papers just took bits of what they could be bothered to cover, and this comes from journalists that actually were there when it happens. They're speaking from it. And they were saying that a lot of the time what happens is, you know, one journalist will be dedicated enough to cover the whole thing, and then it'll come to about 6 o'clock on an afternoon. They'll be like, okay, what should we cover? Get up half the conversation. That is provocative. That's our headline for tomorrow. Job done. And then go home. That'll be it. You know, and because that was the only source of information we had, you couldn't go anywhere else to get anything else. It's like when Sky News tried to do this quite recently with the Ukraine thing, when they saw a load of trucks crossing the border from eastern Ukraine from Russia, and they were like, oh my God, Russia is invading.
Russians are invading. The Russians are invading.
We must cover this. Why is nobody else covering it? So they tweet about it firstly, and then just get a barrage of tweeters back from the Red Cross and their supporters saying, well, hold on a minute, that's our trucks. What, they're going to invade with water and nappies? What's going on? And they didn't even bother to even investigate who those trucks were from. They got a tip-off from some Ukrainian guy saying trucks are coming in from Russia. Probably not even maliciously. Just saying, oh, they might want to have a good story about how, you know, countries are cooperating. So here's, you know, there are trucks coming in. And suddenly, we automatically thought it was worse because Russia can't do anything else but invade. You know, they must be invading.
Half the time, as long as somebody's willing to say it on record, they don't give a shit. And it's with their agenda. As long as someone's willing to say it, who cares? You know, I've asked somebody, they've told me that's all right, that's enough. Yeah, I used to think journalists were very investigative, but nowadays they seem to lack bite. Or the ones that have the bite are suppressed.
Yeah.
Well, from what
because
I've
they're telling the truth. They're trying to tell the truth, and they're extremists, aren't you, Matteo?
Well, from what I've seen, a lot of investigative journalists, if they are real investigative journalists, they either end up becoming dirt poor for doing what they love, or they end up being dirt poor for fighting for the truth. Either way, they're dirt poor. So because of that, they've got very little option of covering what they can cover. There's a lot of journalism. If you write a sensationalized story about, I don't know, someone selling drugs over Facebook, you get thousands of pounds for that story. If you got a story of breaking news,
they made a big mistake when they tried to. The whole journalists will have to hand over their notebooks and video evidence when asked by. I think they made a big fucking mistake at that point, because what they did inadvertently, all right, the BBC feels safe, but there are still media channels that are mainstream that are not as paid and as instigated, and there are things that are being put out where I'm sure that people aren't pleased. You know, you've got Dispatches and Panorama, they cut the bite sometimes. You know, they do tish every now and then, and you've got these kind of places and these journalists that think you're going to attack us. So, you know, if that comes through, that'd be a really silly move. Really silly move.
Look
I think the Sun and the Daily Mail are gonna stand up against it, and then you're gonna see a weird thing where you've got the Sun standing up for activists, which I think would be a weird setup.
Yeah, it would, very much so.
But look at the Guardian when they had to destroy their hard drives.
They did it in the end.
Yeah. You know, so they are restrained.
But you see, the problem with the Guardian is that they are independent still. I mean, it's a strange thing to believe, but they are. I mean, they're massive, but they're independent. And their headquarters are in the UK. If the Sun, I mean, let's switch it around a bit and say that the Sun had the ethics of the Guardian and they got hold of that information, did the same thing. Rupert Murdoch will be laughing in Parliament saying, "Are you mad? I'm not giving you this." You know, because the Sun's headquarters aren't in the UK. They're in, I can't remember. I think it's only one in the Cayman Islands, one in Australia, and one in New York. So there is no way in hell they could ever pin it on them. But because the Guardian are big for us, but tiny compared to the mainstream media moguls out there, that the government could take the piss a little bit with the Guardian and demand that hard disk be stolen. But if it was from the Sun, they could never get it back. The Sun would ignore it.
Yeah. That'd be quite funny. I'd actually wonder whether that would happen at some point when the Sun accidentally does something, because, oh, come on, they've got so many typos in there that we're not talking like fucking degrees, are we? Do you know what I mean? They are going to slip up at some point in their God-forgiven life. And then the government will turn on them, and I think you're right. They've just got no leg to stand on with them.
But will they really, though? What about the phone hacking scandal? If that wasn't a perfect time for the Sun to be brought down,
the politicians.
Oh no, but it could have given quite a broader spectrum of the bringing the press into ill repute in itself and condemning these if they didn't need. See, politics now realise that they need the red tops. They need those red tops to drive the masses, because if they don't, and look what happened with Labour. Labour had the Sun on the side, they got elected.
But the difference is they sell each other out, don't they? They will sell certain members out. You will have this editor did this, or that person did this. You know, you get it all the time, like with Parliament. They're a bunch of pedos, but they'll sell out the lowercase ones first. They're like, oh, look here, have this bloke. He means nothing at the minute. David Cameron's whatever it is, you can have him for the time being, so we can still play Follies at Elm House. Do you know what I mean? It's they kind of sell each other out on what they've got, and you don't even we are closed to what information they dabble with, because we know it happens in Parliament where they use bribes almost with the paedophilia and things like that, or tax or expenses, or someone stringing their boyfriend up.
Well, they use it as a form
by accident. Yeah, you know, you've got they use it all the time, and I would say media, working in the same capitalistic consumerist system that we do, is possibly not much different.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But it's a scary thought, really. I mean, you're right with the red. You know, they do need the red tops. They do need it, and they do sell each other out. It's like with the hacking scandals. Rupert Murdoch gave the police and Parliament gave them a deputy editor of that probably didn't even know it was going on, but sacrificed them anyway. You know,
and we give them too much power. We call them elite, and they really aren't, because when you look at the difference, when you've got things like Jill Dando, where Jill Dando is now in media mainstream that she was out in a pedo ring, she wasn't comfortable, blah blah blah. Obviously the royal doctor gives birth to the baby now, you know, we out them quite a lot, but then when you look at it, they do get caught. Now, when you look at the bankers, they just shove them off the edge of a building or shoot them in the face 14 times with a nail gun and say it's suicide. Do you know what I mean? And you're like, yeah, okay, all right, you're a banker. We weren't able to question that whatsoever. Who shoots themselves in the face with a nail gun multiple times for suicide? Who does that? And who
you wouldn't be alive long enough to shoot yourself in the face 5 times, let alone
yeah,
that.
but have you noticed how there was no further? There was nothing further on that. Nothing.
Unless you put it on automatic, maybe. But wouldn't
he had it round the back of his head as well.
Yeah, he did. He was in the back of the head as well.
Well, unless you wanted to put it on automatic and then place it at the back of your head so you didn't know it was coming because you were a thrill seeker. I mean, most people wouldn't.
But you're missing the best part, Matteo. You're missing the best part. He then, after shooting himself, wrapped himself in the bath in a body bag, all wrapped up.
Right. So obviously they didn't kill a normal banker. This guy was probably from the X-Men.
Yeah.
And had some sort of superpower, clearly.
When you look at it that way, where I think it was 20 or something, weren't it? It was in the 20s, where you've got multiple bankers jumping off of these buildings, shooting themselves and hanging themselves in their homes, and you wonder why there was no media coverage, why it wasn't questioned. We did question it, but I wonder how easily they got away with that, because our activists now have got to a point where Ian Duncan Smith can't even buy his fucking underpants on the expenses without us finding out and plugging it and putting it out. Do you know what I mean? Bankers, I've not heard nothing about that story since.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the bill,
a banking couple and their kids. I can't remember if the kids went missing or if the parents went missing and they were trying to find them. But that was about the same time as the banker's death.
Yeah.
I thought it was a kidnapping or something.
Yeah, they're on a whole different level. The BBC will blackball you. The government, they'll put you in jail. Bankers, they'll just fucking kill you. No matter what way, they're like, oh fuck it don't look like a suicide, but it's the best we can do. Who's gonna question it? We're JP Morgan and Chase. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, if you look at the 1920s America, for example, and this is why I find it so funny if you look at history, because if you look at the mafia, I mean, Al Capone, when he got eventually jailed and put into Alcatraz, a lot of interviews are really interesting because the way that he would deal with it is exactly what we're seeing today in regards to bankers. You know, he'd be saying, the journalists would be saying, you know, some of these murders didn't look like suicides, and he was like, well, they were. You know, we had them off because they'd run out of their thing. And it's like, oh, well, what about, and he'd say, well, the reason why we didn't care about making it look realistic or not is like, who's going to question it? We own the bankers, we own the government, we own the media.
Did you see
if you don't believe it, everybody else will.
Did you see the released FBI letter to Martin Luther King?
I did see that. I was incredibly confused by it. I'm ignorant of what that letter was.
It was to try and make him kill himself.
push him into it.
It
Yeah,
was
but this is
going on
is
about him having affairs, weren't it, and stuff like that, and saying that if he was really a godly man, he would do the decent thing, and he had so many days, didn't it? And then he died.
Like 48 days before very specific, considering that apparently the FBI had nothing to do about it. Nothing to do with it.
They were found guilty in civil court. The American government were found guilty in
Yeah.
civil court.
But wasn't it a technicality though? Because he were found guilty in a civil court, because they were the government, or because they weren't found guilty in a criminal court, they couldn't claim anything off of it.
I
They
don't know,
managed to legally out of it somehow.
but I know that in the civil case that they were found that the government did do something.
when you look at the when we attack people right now, activism, government, yeah, we bully the banks a bit, yeah, we bully the people who, you know, the NSA, the GCHQ, the FBI, the Feds, CIA, we bully them a bit, but we bully the shit, and we dox and we DOS and we do everything we can to the government and these little people. Now I wonder how much that would change when you look at people like JFK, who said there's bad running through this, and while he's in power it's not going to happen. Now you wondered the effort that these people go through to take the higher echelons out, what they would do to small timers if they started breaching on the real space that they needed to breach on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're not even seeing the tip of the iceberg.
Nobody talks about the Crown Commission. I'm not going to bring it up too much. Nobody talks about the Crown Commission, and yeah, no, and that the Queen bows to them, that she does not own that part of land. You know, nobody. Yeah, the City of London. Everyone goes, oh, City of London, please, they're more violent. Oh, the City of London, it's finance capital. What about the City of London? Fucking paedophiles are fucking money launderers, are a cartel, a banking cartel that rules part of the world. What about that? That we don't have? Where's the names?
I think they do.
Where's the expenses of these people? Where is that? Why are we not focusing on people like that?
It's funny how
Or are we
one
gonna
of the
get
only laws in the Magna Carta that still exist was exactly that. The idea that the City of London, or rather the corporation within the City of London, and I think it's the Crown Commission, were later called the Crown Commission, have utter sovereignty. It's one of the oldest British laws that the City of London and all subsequent organisations that are like that will have utter sovereignty as given to them by God, as it's said in the law. Why is that still applicable? But every other human right on the Magna Carta has been somehow rewritten.
It's very applicable. This is why people keep money in Switzerland, because Switzerland is a sovereign nation. It's something because a sovereign's above a corporation, I think.
Well, sovereign mean you answer to your own laws. You are the law.
I think
This
that's
is what I'm saying.
is.
We're chasing these corporations. We're chasing the government. We're chasing the banks. And where's the Crown Commission in this? You know, where's these big players that you know, they always say that the invisible ones are the ones running the show. Well, I've not heard enough names for my liking. I'd like more information on it. I'd like to dig a bit deeper, and I'm sure that people need to, you know, they're scapegoating, and we've got to a point now where we're being labelled extremists by admin. They are admin. We need to learn that. They are admin. That's all the government are. The Queen, she's just a porcelain little ornament that sits in the little Buckingham Palace. She's admin as well.
I mean, you got to think about it this way: is that the government is an admin gone rogue, in the sense that they are supposed to administer the land by which we live on. We are the CEOs, and if you want to look at it in company terms, because we're living under capitalism, we are the CEO and share. We're not CEO. Prime Minister will be the CEO. We are technically the shareholders in a company that doesn't listen to us.
Yeah.
You know, so basically the executive of a company went rogue. Now, could you imagine if suddenly the CEO and the executives of, say, I don't know, Barclays turned around and said to the shareholders, well, we're not going to listen to you because you're too many, we're just going to do what we think, they would be out of their office by probably the next morning, probably quicker, and then most probably killed. But that's another story.
That's where people need to come in, though, isn't it?
You couldn't imagine a corporation like that. You couldn't imagine them ignoring their shareholders. So why are we treating the government just because it's called the government and not a corporation?
And they're not powerful. They're not as powerful. Without the people, they are not powerful. And but the problem is,
there's some people that don't know that, though.
That's the point. It's all about ignorance and education, I think.
Yeah.
There's some people that believe that the government are powerful, that the government is right, that the government is looking out after them because they do only read the Sun, they do only read the bullshit that's given to them. You know, so that they're just going to go along with it, I'm afraid. Until they see another way, until somebody shows them that actually, I mean, like the students, at least at their protests, they're willing to get stuck in.
Yeah.
They ain't fancy arse and pissing about. They're there to make a statement and they're getting on in there. As much as we want a revolution that is peaceful, we are not in a peaceful place in the world at the moment. We have conflict, war, and a might is right attitude. And in order to get rid of that, that is going to take the same kind of mentality to a certain extent and a pig ignorance. You're going to have to be prepared to like Danny got beaten. You know, some people are going to get a beating, I'm afraid, and some people are going to fight back.
Yeah.
And then after that, you can look at getting more conscious and more aware and more peaceful and bringing in different ways and different ideas into society. But first of all, you need the revolution before you can change consciousness of the mass.
Totally agree with you on that, Pete.
Yeah.
You need to get rid of the media, and you need to get rid of the constraints that are in society at the moment that are stopping us from growing. And revolution is the only thing that's going to do that.
Yeah.
And that's
it's as a whole. Yeah, because it's as a whole. Because like you said, if you change the admin, you've still got the initial issue at hand. Do you know what I mean? You can change the shirt anytime you want or the tie colour anytime you want. It's the whole system that's broken. And, you know, while we're running around and bartering with them and making deals with them, they still own us and they still, which I understand now in a kind of way, why protesting can almost be consenting to the government. Because right now, if the people... we look at the people, there are a lot of people dying. It doesn't seem to be affecting us, and it doesn't seem to be affecting the right people, and people don't seem to be standing up for, you know, the mass amount of disabled people dying, the old people that are going to be dying this year through the energy prices. And we can change them, but at the end of the day, we need to find out who the people are at the top who have allowed this to happen for so long and employed that admin and fund that admin.
Like P said, you know, that was when I first started protesting, I was like that little bit nervous, but the more that I've seen of it, the more I believe that the only way that you go in, like you said just there as well, Key, that being consenting by just protesting, actually revolting is the way that you will have to go to overthrow anything. You're going to have to bring down a system which is all-encompassing, propaganda controlling, complete means. You have to take those admins out, you know, and really that admin role, and why we've left that admin role for so long, is like, brings that back to Matteo's point, is that as the shareholders, we've let that stuff go on for too long.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, you don't get...
We need to take back control of our company in a way. That's how we got to look at it. That's how people think.
By sitting there in a circle singing fucking Come By Our. And I'm sorry, I refuse to go to one more protest where we're going to hold hands and fucking shake flowers at the police, because we need to be direct, we need to take action, and we need to revolt.
Yeah.
That's what we need to do.
I've got to rush off, by the way, guys, so I'll speak to you guys soon.
Okay.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.